FIFA's 2026 stadium list wasn't just a celebration, it was a bloodbath. Billion-dollar domes, historic cathedrals, tourism capitals, all rejected, and one mega city flipped the script, walking away from FIFA entirely. Why did six giants, including a $2 billion stadium everyone thought was a lock, end up off the list? Las Vegas first, the newest, shiniest toy in American sport. A $2 billion spaceship squatting in the desert with a skyline that never sleeps. From the outside, it looks inevitable. Of course the World Cup would want Sin City. Bright lights, deep pockets, global magnet. But the World Cup doesn't care about your skyline. It cares about the rectangle at the center of it all. Home of the NFL's Raiders and UNLV football. Allegiant packs around 65,000 fans, expandable for mega events. Here's the problem. Allegiant Stadium was tailored for American football, then engineered to flirt with football. A 19 million pound retractable grass tray rolling in and out of the building like a green stage. That's clever. It's also tight. A FIFA match doesn't just need a 105 by 68 meter pitch. It wants extra breathing room, that geometry halo, so players don't crash into walls. Camera operators have clean lanes, and LED boards plus emergency access can coexist without stepping on each other's cables. Every extra meter you give to the pitch has to come from somewhere else. Benches creep forward, media spaces compress, the lower bowl starts to pinch. At a certain point, the spreadsheet looks like a ransom note. When billions in World Cup revenue hang in the balance, FIFA doesn't compromise on geometry. Vegas sells spectacle better than anyone. The World Cup buys consistency. Grass that plays the same on Monday as it does on Friday. Angles that look identical from city to city, so the broadcast feels like a single continuous show. Allegiant, for all its Polish, couldn't make the cut. For FIFA 2026, the math didn't work. If that's the fate of a brand new marvel, what hope does a classic have? Pasadena answers that. The Rose Bowl is football cinema. The arches, the mountains, the haze that turns late afternoon into gold. It crowned the Men's World Cup in '94. It crowned the Women's in '99. When fans think of American soccer history, the global kind, not helmets and pads, the Rose Bowl sits on the throne, and still, not on the 2026 list. Emotion says it's a snub, the checklist says it's a decision. The modern tournament is a traveling TV set that must be rebuilt overnight to the exact same standard again and again. That means premium hospitality that prints money for partners. Frictionless transport for teams, officials, VIPs, and a crush of broadcasters who all want the perfect shot at the same time. Camera platforms that exist before the trucks arrive, not after. Power redundancies on standby. The Rose Bowl can stage an unforgettable day. It's proved that twice on the sport's biggest stage. But compared with newer builds, the old cathedral fights the little things. Access roads that funnel instead of flow, car parks that choke at volume, premium suites that can't match a sparkling NFL palace down the highway. Tradition is a brilliant storyteller. Spreadsheets don't clap for stories. Does that make it right? Depends on whether you measure a World Cup by goosebumps or by guarantees. Pasadena keeps its magic. The tournament moves on. Orlando is the irony everyone understands. Sunshine, hotels, themed fantasy at every turn. If you're selling a global party, surely the tourism capital is a safe bet. And yet, when the music started, Orlando didn't get a chair. Not because the city can't host people, Orlando can host the planet on a random Tuesday, but because the stadium itself was never the right fit. Camping World Stadium is a survivor. First opened in 1936, rebuilt in patches across decades, and still carrying the bones of another era. For American football, it works. For FIFA's geometry, it's a squeeze. sidelines too tight, breathing room for cameras and safety cut to the edge. The luxury boxes and premium suites FIFA sells to sponsors? Fewer than half of what a modern NFL fortress can print. And even if the city could handle millions of tourists, the footprint around the stadium, the space for broadcast trucks, media tents, sponsor activations, and secure perimeters was cramped compared with the wide canvases of newer venues. Then came the final dagger, Miami. FIFA wasn't going to pick two Florida cities, and when it had to choose, the billion-dollar Hard Rock Stadium was the obvious winner. Orlando, for all its theme park glory, never stood a chance. Here's the brutal irony: endless roller coasters. But the real ride, the World Cup, doesn't stop here. Not this time. The lesson is boring and devastating. Hospitality isn't the same as hostability. The tournament wants the path of least resistance, even if that path cuts through someone's pride. And in Chicago, the script flipped. The city told FIFA no. This wasn't a fringe market. This was America's third largest city, home to Soldier Field, home to a massive soccer fan base that packed stadiums for the 2016 Copa America. For years, Chicago assumed it would be a World Cup lock. Then came the fine print. FIFA's demands read like ransom notes: free police and security, dedicated airports and motorcades, miles of prime land locked down for sponsor villages, billions in local upgrades with almost none of the revenue flowing back to the city. To FIFA, that's standard procedure. To Chicago, it looked like robbery in broad daylight. In 2018, Mayor Rahm Emanuel pulled the plug, saying the tournament's unprecedented demands weren't worth it. For the first time in the modern bidding era, a megacity rejected FIFA, not the other way around. The message was loud: not every market will bend to FIFA's checklist. The World Cup brings glamour, yes, but it also brings handcuffs. And Chicago, of all cities, wasn't about to play ball on those terms. But defiance has a price. Chicago gave up the chance to host the planet's biggest sporting event. The flood of visitors, the global spotlight, the legacy that sticks long after the final whistle. It was a power move, but also a missed stage. Now to Mexico City and the stadium that was supposed to be untouchable, the Azteca, 2 World Cup finals, Pelé's triumph, Maradona's hand of God. If any venue had a guaranteed slot for 2026, it was this one. FIFA even announced it would host the opening match, a coronation for football's most sacred ground. Then came March 2024, and the unthinkable happened. FIFA inspectors raised the red card. The inspection report was blunt. Renovations were 6 months behind schedule. Critical upgrades weren't complete. Safety systems and broadcast infrastructure failed to meet standards. For a moment, the Cathedral of Football looked like a construction site with no guarantee of opening on time. Mexico's pride, its global showcase, the first whistle of the 2026 World Cup, suddenly all of it was at risk because the hammers weren't keeping pace with the promises. Panic followed, emergency meetings, crews working around the clock. By early 2026, just months before kickoff, the renovations were finally signed off, and the Azteca kept its crown. Crisis averted, but the scars remain. Mexico nearly lost the honor of opening the world's biggest tournament, a blow that would have haunted its football legacy for generations. For a terrifying few months, insiders whispered that the opening match might be shifted north, handed to the United States instead of Mexico City. The cost of coming that close? A reminder that even legends aren't safe. At FIFA's table, history is celebrated, but only deadlines get respected. The nation's capital thought it was a lock. Washington, D.C. merged its bid with Baltimore after FedEx Field collapsed out of contention, planning matches at M&T Bank Stadium and a fan festival on the National Mall. 2 separate locations, One for matches, one for celebrations. On paper, it looked workable. In practice, it looked like trouble. The warning signs were there. FIFA craves clean packages. One city, one stadium, one logistics footprint. Washington and Baltimore offered the opposite, a split identity that doubled the complexity. Transport, security, media compounds, VIP flows, all harder to coordinate across two cities. In a ruthless selection, clean beats complex every single time. Then came the shock. 16 cities made the cut. The capital of the host nation did not. Fans, politicians, and tourism chiefs fumed as the reality sank in. The United States would host the World Cup, but not a single game would be played in Washington, D.C. The optics were brutal. Monuments, the National Mall, the seat of power, all sidelined. Baltimore, too, lost its chance to shine. The cost? Billions in visitor spending, priceless global TV moments, and the lasting pride of saying the world's game came through your city. The World Cup doesn't care about symbolism. If the bid is messy, it's out. Step back and the pattern snaps into focus. The World Cup isn't a list of stadiums. It's a list of rectangles multiplied by deadlines and television. The 105 by 68 is only the start. Around it, safety runoffs for full-speed sprints, camera lanes for every angle, LED boards that fund the show, team areas that stay invisible until needed, photographers on the touchline, and emergency access you hope you never use. FIFA's own guides spell it out. At least 4 meters of clearance on the sides, 5 behind the goals, before the advertising boards even begin. That's why a venue can look spectacular on TV and still fail the checklist in the boardroom. Crush any part of that halo and the whole picture bends. Then multiply it by schedule. Matches stacked like dominoes, teams training daily, grounds crews nursing grass like a newborn, broadcasters loading in, tearing down, moving on. In a 104-match tournament, the turnaround time isn't generous, it's brutal. The pitch has to recover in days, sometimes hours, under stadium lights that bake the turf. A venue that barely fits the diagram on paper will choke once the calendar goes live. A venue that fits it with margin will look easy. And in this business, easy is the most beautiful word a tournament director can hear. Money helps. Of course it does. Billion-dollar domes, luxury suites, naming rights, they all look impressive on a brochure. But money without geometry is just a beautifully lit problem. History helps. It gives you aura, energy, memories. But history doesn't widen a tunnel or conjure a compound from thin air. Tourism helps. Hotels and fun keep supporters happy. But if the pitch won't breathe, if the broadcast can't see, the tournament thanks you for your interest and moves along. That's why Vegas missed. The pitch and the bowl were an awkward handshake for FIFA's measurements. That's why Pasadena missed. The soul is immense. The modernization asks were bigger still. That's why Orlando missed. The age, the footprint, the logistics, cleaner canvases won. That's why Chicago walked. The city read FIFA's fine print and told them no. That's why Mexico City almost stumbled but didn't. Legends still had to pass the test, and barely did. That's why DC and Baltimore missed. A late, split bid made the package messy. In FIFA's world, clean beats complex. There's a human side to all of this. Fans don't fall in love with checklists. They fall in love with places. They remember the walk up the hill to the Rose Bowl and the first glimpse of the bowl opening like a storybook. They remember baking in the Orlando sun with 1,000 flags, drums echoing off concrete. They imagined Las Vegas turning a group match into a week-long carnival under neon lights. They pictured the National Mall in Washington packed shoulder to shoulder with watch parties, while Baltimore roared next door. In Chicago, they saw the chance to make Soldier Field the world's stage again, before the city slammed the door. And in Mexico City, they dreamed of the Aztecas' third coronation, the moment almost stolen by deadlines and dust. The World Cup, though, has to run on a promise that every match will be playable, beautiful, safe, and broadcast without a hiccup. Romance makes a brilliant trailer. Reality delivers the show. So what does it take to be picked? Start with the rectangle. Build everything around that breathing space. Start with football geometry first. Don't retrofit an American football shell and hope it fits. Give the grass sunlight, airflow, and a maintenance plan that can handle the grind of 100 matches. Carve out broadcast lanes before you draw another VIP suite. Leave room for compounds and coaches and trucks and miles of temporary cabling that all want the shortest path to the pitch. Design your lower bowl with sight lines already cleared for cameras, not adjusted later with scaffolding. Put training sites on a ring so teams aren't trapped in traffic. Make your airport a willing partner. Make your police a quiet orchestra that never gets noticed. And when all of that is done, then, and only then, sell the dream. The World Cup's list is locked. Fans will still make memories in Pasadena, Orlando, Chicago, Vegas, DC, and beyond. But not on this stage. The pattern was ruthless, and the pattern won. Geometry over glamour, logistics over legend. Clean beats complex. But here's the question that lingers. If these giants didn't make it, which one of the chosen stadiums will crack under the weight of 2026? Every tournament has a weak link. Once you spot it, you can't unsee it.